ventricular system, ventricular cavity, by 10 weeks of gestation. Now, those are the images from normal cases at 12, 15, and 18 weeks of gestation, showing clearly that the position of the choroid plexus gradually moves posteriorly as the brain grows with gestation. Here you can see this white hyperechogenic the part is a choroid plexus and is going to posterior and posterior during the first and early second trimester. Now, therefore, in the case of the holograph encephaly, for example, here this is the 13 weeks of gestation. I already showed the 9 weeks holograph encephaly, and the choroid plexus is only 1. And here you can see this is a semi-lower type of the holograph encephaly, and you can see the choroid plexus continuing from the left to the right ventricle, very obviously. And this is the 11 weeks and 5 days. And if you look at, for example, in the systole section, mid-systole section, still you can see the choroid plexus. Usually you cannot see the choroid plexus in exactly the mid-systole section. However, here you can see this is the mid-systole section. However, you can see the choroid plexus. This is very abnormal. Now, here you can see in the holograph encephaly there is a dorsal sac. It's a very big cystic area in the middle. And this is the 14 weeks holograph encephaly, semi-lobar type, and the fused ventricle are seen. And also, of course, you can see the facial abnormality like this, in the cases of the holograph encephaly. And then I would like to show you the hyaroid artery. This is called the hyaroid artery. This is the 20 weeks of gestation, but in the first trimester you can see the 13 weeks of gestation. This is a normal hyaroid artery, and you can see the bilateral lens in the eyeballs. And then here you can see this is the normal the lens and hyaroid artery in the middle and along with the central canal. However, if you see the holograph encephaly trisomy 13 case, in this case, and then you can see this is the hyaroid artery here, and then what I would like to say is the malposition of the hyaroid artery in the case of the holograph encephaly of the trisomy 13. Now, I told you that the normal cases, and also, I look at the Down syndrome and trisomy 18, that they have all the central hyaroid artery. However, here the trisomy 13 with the holograph encephaly and hypoterorism, and this is a very abnormal position, the malposition of the hyaroid artery in those cases. It's very interesting. And then, now the RE ventriculomegaly, here you can see this is a RE ventriculomegaly at 12 weeks of gestation. Usually, I told you that the choroid plexus is like this, it is called the butterfly sign. But here, this is this very small choroid plexus, and here you can see how to evaluate the RE ventriculomegaly and the atrial width measurement. But the atrial width, the cutoff line usually is set at 10 millimeter. However, very small fetus, small brain, small head, the cutoff of the 10 millimeter is useless, right? Because all of the cases are below the 10 millimeter, and the 12 weeks are in ventriculomegaly case. And if you measure, for example, the atrial width This is 16.6 and 7.5. Of course, the below 10 millimeter. However, maybe all of you agree with me that this is a RE ventriculomegaly, right? Why? Because I measure the volume of the ventricles and choroid plexus like this, and then I calculate the volume of the ventricular occupying ratio and choroid plexus occupying ratio, and then I have several cases of the RE ventriculomegaly, and then what I want to say is that before 16 weeks of gestation, the 3D ultrasound, especially the choroid plexus occupying ratio, is very, very helpful, and it means you don't have to measure. You don't have to measure the volume, but if you look at the choroid plexus, you can say that RE ventriculomegaly if that is a very small. Okay, so and this is a case of that previously I told you the 12 weeks, and later on 18 weeks of gestation, it is the ventriculomegaly is going to worse and worse, and finally this is the de novo CDH2 Hatterheim-2 the variant. Now, going back about the choroid plexus, if you look at the choroid plexus like this, this is 12 weeks, and this is normal, and you can say that this is the RE ventriculomegaly, and also the same is true in the ventriculomegaly case at 15 weeks of gestation. Now, the rare anomaly here, what is this? What is the brain? So this is very abnormal babies, and maybe in Vietnam, many of the conjoined twins are seen, but here you can see this is the 13 weeks of gestation. This is the conjoined twin. Okay. Yes. That is the time. And here you can see this is the 13 weeks, and you can see this is the conjoined twin, and the brain is only one cerebrum, but in the cerebellum, two of them are seen. And finally, RE-CNS vasculature. In 1996, I already published the transvaginal Doppler angiography of the brain, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, and 13 weeks of gestation. I will finish. Okay. So, but the recently, we can see, the many of the RE pregnancy normal and abnormal vasculature in the cases of the. Okay, so therefore, I think nowadays, because of the transvaginal neurosonography, we can see many of the normal and abnormal development of the brain and neurosonography. Thank you very much.